So, let's get into the news. First off, BabsCon has happening this week. Yes, it started on Friday and will continue on until Sunday. Considering how I am not filming this at BabsCon, you can guess where I was during that. I'll give you a hint, not at BabsCon. So, on the level of whether or not I was at BabsCon, I think you can figure out from there. Join me next week when I look at the awkward attempts at vlogging that came out of BabsCon. Here's hoping Pastel Pros finally purchased a better camera than the ones Roger and me was filmed on. Our second news story tonight concerns the title of this show. I have finally decided to name the show. You may remember last week I joked about how I haven't named it yet. Well, I finally decided on a name. And that name is Equestria Redacted. Why did I call it that? Well, because I've been watching way too much Redacted Tonight lately and really like the word redacted. You know? And I figured I'd take the word redacted and then use something pony related, like the word Equestria. Okay? I'm clever, I know. And then I figured Redacted Equestria, well, that just sounds too much like Redacted Tonight. So I called it Equestria Redacted. Boom! I just blew your mind, I bet. Yeah, the show's name is not really all that clever. But it has a name now, and if you look at both the episodes of the weekly series I've done so far, both of them have, in brackets, the new title. As will every single subsequent episode of this show. Our third story concerns a new episode of the show. Yes, everybody! Season 8 had its third episode today. And let me just tell you, it was amazing. In it, Pinky and Maud are hanging out when it turns out that Maud recently got a boyfriend. Which is something I haven't seen in MLP that they haven't screwed up horribly. Let's be honest here, the romance plots in MLP usually suck. Also, I'm beyond happy they just said boyfriend and didn't say, try and say, remember before in like Hearts and Hooves they did very special some pony, which was just awkward to hear every single time. There they finally just cut that out and said, no, it's boyfriend, we're not using these other slang terms or anything, that we're just saying the words, and I'm happy for that. The guy in question is named Mudbriar, and while Pinky first meets him, and they don't really like each other. Mudbriar is essentially some people compared him to Sheldon from the Big Bang Theory. I just absolutely love this guy. He's obsessed with sticks, and he is always, at least technically, correct. And it's just so much fun to watch how he's just hilarious to see. Now, keep in mind, I already love Maud. I already think Maud is a hilarious character. I enjoy the deadpan jokes with her. And then you have this guy who's a little less deadpan, but just is kind of a jerk, if that's really the best way to put it. He's obsessed with always being technically correct. And he always says technically, even if he's just completely correct. It's just fun to watch. I just love to hate him. Now, he actually reminds me of those actually people, and here's how you can tell if your friend's an actually person. Show them this episode, and if they say, actually, at any point, they're one of them, and then get rid of them. We don't need any more actually people in the world. And now I will end with an out-of-context quote. I never learned to read Twilight Sparkle. It makes a little bit more sense in context, I promise. Honestly, this was a great Season 8 episode, and if this was going to be the season that ruined MLP, then I must say, they're doing a pretty bad job at it, because this was one of the funniest episodes of the whole show. It was Funnier than any of the episodes in Season 7 I can think of, or even most of the ones in Season 6 or 5 I can think of. I haven't laughed this hard in an MLP episode in a very long time. Again, this is not the season that's ruining the show. If anything, this is a big improvement over School Days, which was just kind of bland. We have Bland, which is like a C level, and an A level episode. I don't think the show is going to die on a low note. Our third story from tonight has to do with a man named Digibro, or Digibrony, as some of you may know him as. Or I guess as he's going by now, Digibra. Because, you know, he's a college frat boy, apparently. He recently tweeted out this. I hear at Patreon has instituted new rules banning illustrated incest, bestiality, and lolly porn. Why? What does Patreon stand to gain by shutting artists based on the fetish they draw? If they think this is a moral line in the sand, I've lost a ton of respect for them. Well, they actually tend to gain a lot, as advertisers typically do not like, you know, their advertising going on bestiality porn, or lolly porn, or incest porn, especially when lolly porn, I believe, is illegal in the United States. With very few loopholes, mind you. Of course, Digi was once one of the high points of the Brony fandom. However, recently he's been falling from grace more and more in the past few years. I haven't really been following that as much as I personally like. Maybe I can dedicate an entire episode of Equestria Redacted on just this man's fall, because there is quite a bit I can go into. I'm not going to go through all that, mind you. Just letting you know, if you've ever been at all turned on by catching sight of some hot human on, I have no clue how to pronounce that, Gardevoir action, I assume that's an anime thing. Patreon thinks you're a bad person and don't deserve a career on their platform. No, they didn't say you couldn't have that fetish, you just said you couldn't draw it and post it on their website. And again, advertisers would flee if they didn't. You remember what happened when an ad appeared on a racist YouTube video? Racism, while not societally acceptable in most scenarios, is still usually more accepted than bestiality. I assume anyone who draws, I have no clue how to pronounce that, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, or any relevant anime is SOL, since everything is incest these days. Everything is incest these days. Hell, good luck finding enough anime characters over the age of 18 to fill a book with. Patreon is also specifically, I have no clue, no teens. Did it ever consider you that's just a fault with the genre? Now, mind you, the reason for that is, I believe in Japan the age of consent is lower than in one in the United States. I believe it's about 13 or 14 there. Yes, in the US it's 18. So typically it's more acceptable there. And if so, there are tons of websites you can go to. But my question is, Digi, why are you so defensive of lolly porn of all things? Are you a pedophile? I'm not accusing you, mind you. I'm genuinely asking. Now, don't get me wrong. There is a very, very flimsy and weak argument, but a genuine one you could make from a very hardcore libertarian perspective. But Digi's not making that argument. It would involve talking about freedom of speech. He's instead just talking about, does Patreon morally think not me, this random guy is a bad person? What? It's just a weird argument to make. Our fifth story comes from a man named Alex Rochon, I believe is how you pronounce that. I'm not good with pronunciations, or however you pronounce it. Or however you pronounce it, for that matter. Recently, he dumped Josh Scorcher as a friend. This, of course, went to the Rift, and was eventually found by FNGR, which he put in How Not to Brony. It made up the majority of How Not to Brony episode 72. in which he just sort of incoherently rambles while more or less screaming at the sky about how bad that mean old Alex is and how we should just remain friends with Josh. The only thing close to his incoherent screeching that could be really count as an argument is that he says that Josh is going through a bad time, and as such, Alex should not have dumped him until said bad time was over. In which case, I must ask, one, is Josh ever not going through a bad time? Like seriously, you ever noticed that for the past year or so, it's just been bad time after bad time for him? I genuinely kind of feel sorry for him at this point. You know, it's just bad time, bad time, bad time, bad time. My friends are pedophiles. Nobody is liking my explanation. Nobody believed my good Christian definition of forgiveness. And to respond to his wrong time argument, I would simply like to read him a quote from MLK. The time is always right to do what is right. And for that matter, the reason Alex dumped Josh as a friend was over his handling of the Toon Critic situation, which, mind you, FNGR has supposedly been an active critic of. You can watch his How Not to Bronies. He has been an active critic of not only the situation, but how the Brony community has been handling it. And yet, at the same time, when one of Josh's friends agrees with him to the point where he says he's not going to associate with one of the main causes as to why the situation has turned out so bad, Mr. Good Christian definition of forgiveness, Josh Scorcher, then FNGR just can't stand it. It doesn't make any sense. FNGR is an obnoxious hypocrite. That is the best way to describe him. Now, you may be wondering, as someone who we've already talked about in the show, a man named Lethal Cuddles wondered recently, yeah, if we can stop pushing the blame for Toon Critic's behavior on the rest of the analysis community, that'd be great. Why are y'all still doing this 2 months later? And the answer is simply because the community reacted to it badly, and because they have not taken the proper steps to prevent this. People like me and Beta and Patchwork are trying to prevent this. They don't want to prevent this. And then if you suggest that maybe they have similar issues, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist. If you suggest that it's just one big club and you ain't in it, well, then you're just one big conspiracy theorist yourself, apparently. Or if you deny the complete truth that Lily Pete uses mind control devices or something, I still can't for the life of me figure those theories out. However, a man named Deaver has a different theory, and it's simply Lily Pete. That's why. Yes, Deaver, it is all Lily Pete's fault this happened, because she called the community out, which would still make it the community's fault, unless you didn't want the community to be called out. I think we've talked about Deaver before, but I'm not entirely sure. Now, in case you don't remember Lethals, though, someone who I think we've already talked about, but don't quote me on that. In fact, I may have even talked about this specific post before, but I'm not entirely sure, and it fits here perfectly anyway. When Lily Pete dared say that having autism doesn't give you the right to speak for every single person with autism, someone else replied with, "How a bit this, ya bitch. Maybe doon't speak for autistics when you aren't autistic. Liminawa. Liminawa." It's Hawaiian. And then the real Todd Howard said, "How about Lily Pete just stop speaking?" Oh, that was an epic wreck. And then Lethal said, "Holy fuck, Lily, I swear to God, I will slap the shit out of you." But remember, when Lily Pete threatens violence, or appears to be threatening violence, that is bad. But when Lethal Cuddles does it, then it's just fine. Now, the rest of this video will be spent with the E4B. Now, I like to make fun of the E4B quite a bit because they're just terrible. And I mean terrible. However, this last week for them, it's just been amazing. So strap in, kids. We're looking at this week at E4B. It's wow. I think it's appropriate to start off with their coverage of the Alex situation, when Alex dared to suggest that maybe we shouldn't allow pedophiles, known pedophiles specifically, into our group projects. Anime Wolf Gamer wrote the post on E4B about it, and it is just... it's probably the perfect example of naivete. So let me get this straight. You only listen to one victim, and that gets you to believe that this entire D&D thing will continue to give Toon a platform to come back. I'm sorry, Alex, but that is not really a good point. Where else is Toon gonna go? Well, now that you mentioned it, Toon actually got a new Discord account which he can use to push for sympathy. And you want to know how I know that's true? Because I found it on obviously the most credible source, the E4B! Okay guys, heads up, Toon is trying to come again and it seems he's still migrating in the furry fandom and got a new Sonic OC to boot. Please, people, warn everyone of this. I assume he means warn. Spread this far and wide. He could still be trying to get into kids' pants. Now, the mod who posted that to E4B was Anime Wolf Gamer. And the one who made the post about how that's impossible is also Anime Wolf Gamer. He couldn't even get like a friend to post that one. He had to post it himself. Even if it made previous posts kind of idiotic, especially when those posts came out within a week of each other. This isn't even like going through and finding posts about how they don't believe Lightning Bliss stole assets, or how they denied the Toon allegations when I was calling him out on it, originally for about a year. This is within the same span of 7 days. Less than 7 days, mind you. Also, notice this little bit. Seriously, you won't be happy if they took it all down because then you'll complain they are hiding it. 1, that's not what any of us want. We just want them to remove the material that was going to be released after they found out Toon was a pedophile, not before. We're all fine with them keeping up the material beforehand, but 2, how do you know? Do you have the power to go into an alternate dimension and figure that out? You know, I always hate these arguments like, well, if the circumstances were different, you'd be saying something also against them. How do you know? That situation has not yet happened. It's intellectually dishonest to do, although this is the E4B, so what do I expect? Or how about in this post, where they go after Patchwork for making a similar case, that this is going to be used to bring Toon back into the community. Well, one of the E4B mods, in this case, again, Anime Wolf Gamer, which... Anime Wolf Gamer, apparently, I didn't even think he existed for a long time, but apparently he does, posted an image of Toon being killed by, I think, film strip. It's drawn atrociously. And there is blood. At least I think blood. It may just be Red Mountain Dew for all I know. Because it's so poorly drawn. Link in the description, by the way. Now, you would assume E4B has no issue with people posting images with blood on them then, as they have, I think, done so themselves. Well, you would be wrong, and again, this is in the same span of less than 7 days. When Lily Pete posted an image with the description last month in a nutshell of her and a microphone and Josh's OC bleeding on the floor. Mind you, it was photoshopped, and the blood was already there in the original image as it was stolen from Zero Punctuation. Then the E4B had this reaction. Anime Wolf Gamer again responded with, "Wow, Pete, make it more obvious you want to kill him by adding blood. That will sure make us see you're the good guy. Well, didn't you guys add blood? Do you guys really want to kill Toon Critic?" I'm just making sure we have clarification, and it's basically impossible to have you guys see Lily Pete as the good guy in anything. And then Death Pony said this. He's basically the Bajork stalker now. Yes, I'm comparing Lily Pete to that person. That's how bad she is. Now, I have no clue why they didn't just use the guy's actual name, Rodrigo Lopez. It would have been much easier. But I've noticed some theoretical, very important, mind you, differences between Lily Pete and Rodrigo Lopez. Mainly, say what you will about Lily Pete has never tried to kill anybody. I'm just saying, I don't think you need to be some super fan of Lily Pete to say, at least she hasn't attempted murder. Now, lastly, when it comes to E4B, I'd like to actually read you guys a little conversation that was had. And I'm reading you this because, as discussed last week, E4B seems to not really want to talk about me, but still wants to passive-aggressively put my name in tags. And this time they ask, "What stupid excuse will you screech about us on Twitter?" Well, I'm not going to tell you it on Twitter, I'm going to tell you it on YouTube. And by the way, what does it matter what platform I tell you it on? Would my point be more valid if I told you on Tumblr? Really? The answer is, of course not. But this conversation just shows the minds of these people. It all started when an anonymous user told Lizzie, "You do know all the proceeds being granted from Brony D&D is being donated to netsmart.org, right? Sorry about the spaces, I'm not allowed to post links." Lizzie then responded with, "So, that doesn't solve the main problem it has." Which I think is a valid point. That doesn't solve the problem as much as it does ignore the problem. Then a guy named EaglesFan986 stepped in with a, "Wow, not even a well, it's nice that they're doing that at least. Lizzie, you really are your wife." I'm just going to remember that first part. It will become important in a minute, trust me. Then a guy named Keyblade Overlord tagged Brittany and said, "I think Lizzie's getting farther and farther from saving, sadly." Brittany then said, "She's in really deep, and unfortunately it seems like she's taken most of her pointers in dealing with situations like this from Lily. Unfortunately, she may end up having to learn what Lily is the hard way. I'm sure Lily is watching herself a bit more carefully around Lizzie right now because she needs her to stay around. Once Lizzie moves in or they get legally married," correct me if I'm wrong, but they've been legally married for, I think, over a year now, "true colors will start to leak out." They haven't in a full year, but, eventually they will. Then, another person, this one is, of course, Sega Sister, because why wouldn't it be Sega Sister? Simply posted a screenshot of the already mentioned screenshot, but this time with Lily Pete saying, "Never use charity as a shield." In which she said, "Okay then, don't use mine or Patchwork's You Caring campaigns as shields." My response is simply, she never did that. The only one who even really mentioned it in this context that could possibly be considered that is me. And please, stop taking passive-aggressive jabs towards me while trying to take actual aggressive jabs towards Lily Pete. If you have an issue with me, directly say me. I'm Ephrom Josine, not Lily Pete. But even then, she didn't use it as a shield. She simply posted the link to the You Caring campaign. Would you prefer she not do that and her fans not donate to your campaign, which, mind you, is about you getting away from an abusive household? If so, then may I just say you have some really screwed up priorities. Death Pony then got in and said this: Lily, don't use charity as a shield. Also Lily Pete. Yo, send donation to Sega Sister after I kept mocking her, K? That isn't using charity as a shield. Using charity as a shield would imply that she used that to excuse previous actions, which she did not. You're making things up, or you simply just do not understand what words mean. And then Death gives this little pot shot. Same with Patchwork, who I totally didn't use for my own purpose to harass Josh. Yes, Death Pony, Lily Pete has a mind control machine that she put on Patchwork and specifically uses to harass Josh. Wow. And mind you, I haven't even covered everything I want to cover this week yet. But this video is stretching 25 minutes. If I were to cover every single E4B instance I wanted to this week, this video would be an extra 5 to 10 minutes long. That's how much this last week has been for them. But that's it. I'm Ephrom, and good night.